Looking at a fascinating new book which is tracing generations of family history, migration and identity, which is set to launch next month as part of the South Australian History Festival. Paving the Way, pioneer ancestors from England, Ireland, Prussia and Bavaria to South Australia and New Zealand explores stories of early settlers, personal discovery and the complex legacy of the past. And I'm delighted to be joined live from Australia by its author, Dr. Samantha Battams. Samantha, good morning to you. Well, I say good morning, but it's well past morning where you are.
Yes, it's well past morning. We're at dinner time here. Thanks very much, Alan.
Thanks for making time for us. So before we get to the book itself, maybe tell us a little bit about your story. I believe you come from a background in public health and policy. So what drew you into genealogy and historical writing, Samantha?
Well, that's a good question. Yeah, I do have a PhD in public health. I've actually worked in Geneva in that area and also psychology and sociology. But I was really motivated to research my family history because my father was adopted and he sadly died at a young age. And I was just really keen to find out who his biological ancestors were. And that led me to a search going right back to the early settlers in South Australia, where I found pioneer ancestors from Clare in Ireland.
Okay, so you've connections to here, and the story spans not just Clare in Ireland, but I guess multiple countries and generations. What were some of the biggest discoveries for you along the way, Samantha?
Well, the discoveries were, quite amazing that I had ancestors that were really the first boatloads of people to come to South Australia, and a lot of them had a key role in establishing the place. There were a group of Prussians that were basically religious refugees, if you like, and they were sponsored to come over here by an Englishman, George Fife Angus, and they really established the Barossa Valley, which is well known throughout the world for its wine. And my ancestor on that side was the first winemaker in the Barossa Valley. And also the Irish that came over in 1857 had a key role in the Kapunda mines. They were sponsored by someone from Clare, actually, called Charles Bagot. So he was encouraging a lot of people to come over just after the potato famine to come to South Australia. So there were a lot of people from Clare. And they come over with friends and relatives. So their cousins came over, their aunties sponsored them to come over. There were also people with mining interests that sponsored them to come over. So it was really interesting to see the patterns of migration, that people moved in groups, as did the Germans. And for some time, the Germans and the Irish were outsiders in an English community, a European community, and they actually, there was a lot of intermarriages that I saw between the early Germans and the Irish communities, and that happened in my family as well. So I was surprised to find that some of them actually worked for, the very first surveyors of the state, like the Bavarian Johann Grant, the first winemaker, was surveying with Colonel Light. And one of them was working for the first governor of South Australia as a gardener, and then worked on to deliver provisions to the Burra mines, which were just past Kapunda. So there was lots of interesting history. I also found a DNA surprise along the way on my mother's side when I did the DNA, and that was someone from New Zealand. So one group went to New Zealand before they came to South Australia. And so I had a great-grandfather, that I didn't think was the great-grandfather, but the DNA revealed that I had another great-grandfather. So, lots of interesting history that I found.
It sounds like there was not just doors open, but windows as well to your past, and finding so many discoveries. And I guess finding another great grandparent was a bit of a shock or a surprise, albeit a pleasant one. But you touch on DNA, Samantha, and the role DNA technology plays, and how crucial modern science is in helping to reshape your understanding of your own ancestry.
Yes, that's right. And I still actually don't know who my father's father was. So on my grandmother's side, paternal biological grandfather's side, it is that Irish, Prussian and Bavarian. But I'm hoping that with DNA advancing and more people being on DNA sites, I will be able to find out exactly who the grandfather was. But certainly that DNA discovery that only emerged last year revealed a secret that had been kept from 1890 to 2025. So the family that I knew, I did lots of research on them from their travelling from England to New Zealand to South Australia. So I did a lot of complex family history on that side, only to discover that some of them I wasn't biologically related to only last year. And that led me to find that I had even more Celtic blood with, a group of people from Wales and northeast England. Yeah, that certainly was a surprise. But then when I found out more about the people that I'm DNA connected to, I can actually relate to some of these people I find out about. For example, Michael Patrick Fay, who was the son of the first great-great-grandfather to come over from Ireland. His name was Edmund Fay. But the son, Michael Patrick Fay, was really into the theatre, and like a lot of Irish, he loved his recitations and dancing and singing, and he was a real community leader as well, organising, the first community hall, the first school in Mount Gambier in South Australia at Marac, establishing the first football teams, the first fete where you had many people coming along, and was involved in coursing races as well at the time. But I related to some of his interests as well, and I didn't know where they came from. Like, I studied drama as well early on, and he was involved in amateur plays around Adelaide. So it is interesting when you do find the biological connections, some of the patterns that you see within families, and that actually go across generations as well.
I think, Samantha, you mentioning you've connections to Fahys, you're going to there'll be a lot of Fahys in Clare listening this morning. You're going to start getting Christmas cards now, so just keep an eye out for those later in the year. But you touched on the word, a colony earlier on, and it touches back on a chat I had on yesterday's show with the Clare singer-songwriter Anya Tyrrell, who's recently back after a decade in Australia, and she really touched on, her own music, but also music in Australia, talking about, I suppose, Irish songs and stories tend to be about people leaving. In Australia, it's more about people arriving. So, of course, the history of Australia is connected to colonisation. But one of the points Anya made was she felt maybe that, like with Britain, how we feel here in Ireland, they don't maybe recognise or reconcile with elements of their past. Anya feels in Australia there isn't enough focus on colonisation and the negative aspects of that. She spoke about parts of the outback she was being in. She referred to them as so-called Australia because of the many different cultures, indigenous cultures there. And you don't shy away from the realities of colonisation, and particularly the impact on Aboriginal communities. How did you approach telling that part of the story?
Well, I thought it was really, really important to talk about the first interactions between my ancestors and Aboriginal people. Coming from a public health background, I know the long-term effects of colonisation and, the determinants of health associated with colonisation. So I thought it was really important to look at any interactions that I could find on newspapers online. I actually found quite a bit. And they were often told from a European perspective, but I had individual ancestors who were the first colonists reminiscing about corroborees of 500 people they saw on the banks of the River Torrens in Adelaide, or someone who was providing food to the Burra mines, talking about how precarious it was and how sometimes they might be ambushed by local Aboriginal communities, but on the other hand, that same person was going to Aboriginal communities and providing food to them as well. And there was another example of an ancestor down south who was rescued by the local Ngarrindjeri tribe on more than one occasion. On once when he was young and he fell into a river, and a local Aboriginal group rescued him. And then another time when he was an adult, and he also talks about an Aboriginal elder who was passing down information to him about medicinal herbs that actually healed him. So there was some negative stories there. I came across someone in the family, in my stepfather's family, who had captured an Aboriginal person who was suspected of murdering someone, and they were walking back to Adelaide from Burra, which is some, 300 kilometres or so. And the Aboriginal people actually had to walk while the mounted policemen were on horseback. They went into a local station to get horses for the Aboriginal man and his. And actually, there was an accident with the horse, and the Aboriginal person died. So it was one of the first deaths in custody, and there was then there were two policemen there. One of them went to get a medicine man and a local magistrate. They went to the site and they buried the person on site. And then it was many years later that that body was discovered, and it was an article that I saw from many years later where it was revealed that a body was found. And then this person in the family goes to the newspaper and said, "Oh, that was me, when I was a mounted policeman, somebody died and we buried him here," and sort of owned up to it. And it was quite shocking to hear about how he talked about it. So I just thought, for reconciliation in Australia, it's really important to be talking about the past, the stories, a lot of the negativity and impacts, as well as some of the more positive stories. And I hadn't seen that in other family histories within my family or other people's families. So I think it's well time that we do look at our past and we do talk about those interactions, within our families, because, if you did have early settlers, there was no doubt that there were interactions with local Aboriginal communities.
Yeah, I mean, it's great that you are delving into that, and a fascinating book, and it has also helped sprout many extra branches on your own family tree, so which I'm sure you're thrilled with as well. Fascinating book. It's called Paving the Way, Pioneer Ancestors from England, Ireland, Prussia and Bavaria to South Australia and New Zealand. It's going to be launched at the South Australian History Festival next month, the 15th of May to be precise. I'm sure it'll get a great reception. I'm looking forward to having a read of it myself. Samantha, thank you so much for taking the time to join us and giving us dinner time. We'll let you get your dinner now. So thanks very much for being with us on the show.
Thanks, Alan. And I would be keen to hear from any Fahey ancestors. I see I'm connected to them on the website, so I would be keen to hear.
Okay, there you go. Any Fahys listening this morning, get in touch with us. We'll put you in touch with Samantha or contact her online as well. Dr. Samantha Battams, the author of that fascinating book, Paving the Way, with us on Morning Focus.